Good evening. It's November 5th, 2023. Do fleets of multicolored orbs battle about the morning sun only to fall down in smoke? The executives of Safe Moon LLC were charged with defrauding investors. Scientists detected the most distant fast radio burst to date. Arrow has a new reporting form for UAP whistleblowers. But is the actual disclosure just hidden in plain sight? Think about it. Disclosure. The alien tech is literally hidden inside the word disclosure. The disclosure is the name disclosure itself. All this and more tonight. I'm Telesma Blue Orb.
I'm Jeff Knox.
I'm Luis Cayetano.
And welcome to the UFO Detox Hour. And now for the rebrief. Safe Moon executives were charged for fraud. On Wednesday, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged the limited liability company SafeMoon with defrauding its customers into investing in their SafeMoon cryptocurrency token before destroying its market value, withdrawing $200 million worth of assets, and also stealing and using their investors' funds. SafeMoon Company founder Kyle Nagy, Chief Executive Officer John Caroni, and Chief Technology Officer Thomas Smith were all charged. On Tuesday, the United States District Court Eastern District of New York indicted these three with a large-scale scheme of misleading SafeMoon cryptocurrency investors. Quote, among other things, Caroni, Nagy, and Smith represented to investors that SafeMoon relied on quote-unquote locked liquidity pools that would automatically increase in size due to the 10% tax on every SafeMoon transaction, that the locked SafeMoon liquidity pool prevented Caroni, Nagy, Smith, and other insiders at SafeMoon from being able to quote-unquote rug pool SafeMoon investors by removing tokens from SafeMoon liquidity pool, and that the developers were not holding and trading SafeMoon for their personal benefit. These representations were materially false, unquote. Expanding Frontiers Research, an independent organization founded by Erica Lukes that investigates history and potential criminal exploitation around the UFO community, has previously reported on SafeMoon as well. Through Freedom of Information Act requests, EFR uncovered various complaints filed with the Federal Trade Commission relating to SafeMoon and cryptocurrency fraud. EFR reported that Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, a small ranch in northeastern Utah that is surrounded by numerous popular claims of the paranormal, has also previously endorsed and promoted SafeMoon on numerous occasions using his Twitter account, while also touting the benefits of decentralized financing. EFR identifies this as a larger pattern among influential people associated with the UFO community, such as prominent scientist Avi Loeb, promoting unreliable and potentially fraudulent cryptocurrencies. Ufos has revamped their website. In celebration of the 50th anniversary of its founding, Ufos, or the Center for UFO Studies based in Chicago, made major updates to their website last week. In addition to changing the layout and appearance of their site, ufos.org, the nonprofit has also added a number of new archival resources, including the International UFO Reporter, the Journal of UFO Studies, the Ufos Associate Newsletter, the Ufos Bulletin, and the UFO Investigator, published by the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or NICAP. Ufos was originally founded by scientist J. Allen Hynek in order to study reports of unidentified flying objects. The organization continues as a nonprofit for preserving archival materials, promoting the UFO topic, and advocating for UFO research. Arrow has issued a new report form for UAP whistleblowers. On Tuesday, the Department of Defense reported that AARO, or the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, has issued a new UFO reporting form on their website. The purpose of this form is to allow former or current government employees to report on any knowledge they may have about government programs or activities related to unidentified anomalous phenomena. AARO's primary purpose will continue to be to gather and investigate investigate data. AARO's primary purpose will continue to be to gather and investigate data relating to possible UAP for purposes of national defense. In July, former intelligence official David Crush claimed before a House Oversight Subcommittee on UAP that he had knowledge that the government is in possession of UAP. More recently, Sean Kirkpatrick said that while AARO has talked with most of the people who may have knowledge about Grush's claims, AARO doesn't have knowledge of a secret UAP crash retrieval program. He also said that AARO has sent Grush 4 or 5 invitations to talk, all of which he has reportedly declined. And now for This Week in UFO History.
Hi, I'm Jeff Knox, and this is This Week in UFO History, where each week I share cases or important events from the UFO historical record. This week we'll be discussing the Levelland UFO case, or WAVE, of November 2nd through 3rd, 1957. That occurred in or around the town of Levelland, Texas. This wave also includes cases that go beyond those 2 days and spread out a little bit further than just Levelland. You could more generally think of it as the southwestern wave of November 1957. However, many sightings did occur on those 2 days around Levelland. This case or wave is considered by many ufologists to be one of the most impressive because of the amount of witnesses involved over a relatively short period of time. I'll be sharing with you guys the Texas Tech college student case in Levelland, as well as 2 from White Sands Missile Range as an example of the cases during this period. And last minute, I added a case I posted today from Eglin Air Force Base. Our first case happened on November 3rd, 1957, near Levelland, Texas. At 12:05 a.m., Texas Tech college student Newell H. Wright is driving west 1 mile west of Meyer, Texas, when the ammeter gauge on his car dashboard starts fluctuating wildly. The car motor gradually goes out, then the headlights and the radio die. He gets out to check, and he sees a white or aluminum-colored oval-shaped object, flat on the bottom, like a loaf of bread, with a bluish-green tint about 75 to 125 feet long. After a few minutes, the object suddenly rises up from the road ahead and descends almost vertically at great speed, slightly to the north, disappearing in seconds. After that, the car starts again. 3 hours later, 3 military police report an object over the White Sands base. At 3 a.m., 2 military police at White Sands Missile Test Range, New Mexico, Corporal Glenn H. Toy and a Private First Class James E. Wilbanks, are making rounds in their Jeep when they notice a bright object high in the sky. It drops down to about 150 feet, and then the light goes out. A few minutes later, the light goes on again and drops to the ground in a bunker area 3 miles away, and then it goes out again. The UFO is described as egg-shaped and is about 225 to 300 feet in diameter. Later that evening, a pulsating color-changing object is seen near the Trinity site. At 8 p.m., Army Specialist 3rd Class Henry R. Barlow and Specialist 3rd Class Forrest R. Oakes of Army Garrison Detachment 5 are in a Jeep patrolling west near the site of the first A-bomb explosion, the Trinity site, in the White Sands Proving Grounds, New Mexico. They see a pulsating red light that turns to white, possibly 200 to 300 feet in size and 4 to 5 miles away. It brightens and dims, then sometimes goes out, rising in the sky from the ground or from about 50 feet over the bunker up to about 45 degrees elevation until it looks like a star or a point source. They watch it for 25 minutes before it disappears. It's considered possibly Venus in the southwest, which sets at 8:30 p.m., although many people disagree with that. On November 5th, The Air Force released another UFO fact sheet in response to the Levelland wave, highlighting the high percentage of explained cases and the lack of threat to national security. I'm going to do one more case. Quick mention of a case of radar tracking high altitude objects over Eglin Air Force Base. Since it sort of relates to this wave, it takes place at the same time. And more generally, there's been a lot of recent talk about Eglin Air Force Base as a location of UFO sightings on Twitter. Eglin has also been mentioned in the Sebago case that I posted a thread about today, and a few other cases from this time period. On November 5th, 1957, at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, at 2:37 p.m., an object was tracked by the AN FPS-16 radar set at high altitude. Later, another object was detected at 45,000 feet, while the first object was now at 39,000 feet. Flight paths were not on a straight line at any time. After 1 hour and 33 minutes, the objects faded from radar at an altitude of 204,800 feet, heading west. Now, the Air Force concluded that the radar returns were likely electrical interference. They were testing the equipment at that time, which, it's kind of funny. A lot of these radar cases we get happen to be when they're doing tests and upgrades on the radar equipment. They did actually send jet interceptors up in this case, some T-33 trainers, I believe, and they were not able to see anything except for a fleet of F-102As that were also in the area at the time. And as I said, the Air Force concludes the radar returns were likely electrical interference, and then later returns were just the fleets of planes they had up in the air that they were mistakenly confused for the old target. These are just a few of the cases that happened during this period over the week of 1957. Multiple sightings of egg-shaped objects were reported by witnesses. Several cases of car or vehicle or electrical interference were observed. Witnesses included everyone from police, military, students, professionals, families. Perhaps the biggest thing these cases are known for is vehicle interference. While they may not be the first cases on record of vehicle interference, there were in fact some predecessors even in the airship wave. And there were cases in Italy in 1954 of like a tractor that went out when a UFO was nearby. And there was also cases in early science fiction. This wave essentially started off the vehicle interference or car engine stopping cases or radio interference case category, or at least popularized it in the United States. When people think of Levelland and UFOs, they usually think of vehicle interference cases and egg-shaped craft. If you like these cases, be sure to check out my threads on them for more resources. Attached to my Neural Right thread, which was the Texas Tech College student, I included a long list of general sources on this wave that mention these cases and many other cases that happened during this time period. So you can spend a lot of time digging into them. Another interesting case you might want to check out is one I just posted today, the Coast Guard cutter Sebago case that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. This case also mentions Eglin in it. And Kevin Randall has also written a book in the last few years called Levelland, where he covers all these cases and many more from this flap that you might want to check it out. And that's a small sampling of the cases from this last week.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about two scientific studies that have been done recently. They were summarized on sciencedaily.com, and we'll put the links to these summaries in the description, and I'll just basically read, mostly paraphrase from them, sometimes verbatim, but these are actually, what one story is about fast radio bursts, the other one is about the evolution of complexity. So the first one, you can see the reference right there. The authors and the paper itself is a luminous fast radio burst that probes the universe at redshift 1, and that was published in the journal Science this year. So let me read the summary from sciencedaily.com and add some other observations. So an international team has spotted a remote blast of cosmic radio waves lasting less than a millisecond. This fast radio burst, or FRB, is the most distant ever detected. Its source was pinned down by the European Southern Observatories, or the ESO's Very Large Telescope, or VLT, in a galaxy so far away that its light took 8 billion years to reach us. The FRB is also one of the most energetic ever observed. In a tiny fraction of a second, it released the equivalent of the sun's total emission over 30 years. The discovery of the burst, named FRB 20220610A, was made in June last year by the ASCAP radio telescope in Australia, and it smashed the team's previous distance record by 50%. Using ASCAP's array of dishes, we were able to determine precisely where the burst came from, says Stuart Ryder, an astronomer from Macquarie University in Australia and co-lead author of the study published today in Science. Then we used ESO's VLT in Chile to search for the source galaxy, finding it to be older and further away than any other FRB source found to date, and likely within a small group of merging galaxies. The discovery confirms that FRBs can be used to measure the missing matter between galaxies, providing a new way to weigh the universe. Current methods of estimating the mass of the universe are giving conflicting answers and challenging the standard model of cosmology. If we count up the amount of normal matter in the universe, the atoms that we're made of, we find that more than half of what should be there today is missing, says Ryan Shannon, professor at the Swinburne University of Tech in Australia, who also co-led this study. We think that the missing matter is hiding in the space between galaxies, but it may be so hot and diffuse that it's impossible to see using normal techniques. Fast radio bursts sense this ionized material. Even in space that is nearly perfectly empty, they can see all the electrons, and that allows us to measure how much stuff is between the galaxies, says Shannon. Finding distant FRBs is key to accurately measuring the universe's missing matter, as shown by the late Australian astronomer Jean-Pierre Macquart in 2020. JP showed that the further away a fast radio burst is, the more diffuse gas it reveals between the galaxies. This is now known as the Macquart relation. Some recent radio bursts or fast radio bursts appear to break this relationship. Our measurements confirm that the Macquart relation holds out to beyond half the known universe, says Ryder. While we still don't know what causes these massive bursts of energy, the paper confirms that fast radio bursts are common events in the cosmos and that we will be able to use them to detect matter between galaxies and better understand the structure of the universe, says Shannon. The result represents the limit of what is achievable with telescopes today, although astronomers will soon have the tools to detect even older and more distant bursts, pin down their source galaxies, and measure the universe's missing matter. The International Square Kilometer Array Observatory is currently building 2 radio telescopes in South Africa and Australia that will be able to find thousands of FRBs, including very distant ones that cannot be detected with facilities. ESO's extremely large telescope, a 39-meter telescope under construction in the Chilean Atacama Desert, will be one of the few telescopes able to study the source galaxies of bursts even further away than this latest one. So some thoughts about that in terms of the extraterrestrial and SETI topic is that, of course, these techniques can also be generalized to finding signatures of distant civilizations potentially. As our instruments get more sensitive, we might be able to find more evidence of technological civilization. The second paper I wanted to, let me just see if there's any comments here. Okay, at least I'm not muted. The second paper, paper in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, today describes a missing law of nature, recognizing for the first time an important norm within the natural world's workings. In essence, the new law states that complex natural systems evolve to states of greater patterning, diversity, and complexity. In other words, evolution is not limited to life on Earth. It also occurs in other massively complex systems, from planets and stars to atoms, minerals, and more. Authored by a 9-member team leading scientists from the Carnegie Institution for Science, the California Institute for Technology, Caltech, and Cornell University, and philosophers from the University of Colorado. The work was funded by the John Templeton Foundation. Macroscopic laws of nature describe and explain phenomena experienced daily in the natural world. Natural laws related to forces in motion, gravity, electromagnetism, and energy, for example, were described more than 150 years ago. The new work presents a modern addition, a macroscopic law recognizing evolution as a common feature of the natural world's complex systems, which are characterized as follows. They are formed from many different components, such as atoms, molecules, or cells, that can be arranged and rearranged repeatedly. They're subject to natural processes that cause countless different arrangements to be formed. Only a small fraction of all these configurations survive in a process called selection for function. Regardless of whether the system is living or not, when a novel configuration works well and function improves, evolution occurs. The author's law of increasing functional information states that the system will evolve if many different configurations of the system undergo selection for one or more functions. An important component of this proposed natural law is the idea of selection for function, says Carnegie astrobiologist Dr. Michael L. Wong, first author of the study. In the case of biology, Darwin equated function primarily with survival, the ability to live long enough to produce fertile offspring. The new study expands that perspective, noting that at least 3 kinds of function occur in nature. The most basic function is stability. Stable arrangements of atoms or molecules are selected to continue. Also chosen to persist are dynamic systems with ongoing supplies of energy. Of course, energy is an important aspect of life, and some scientists have defined energy in terms of its relation to energy and entropy. The third and most interesting function is novelty, the tendency of evolving systems to explore new configurations that sometimes lead to startling new behaviors or characteristics. Life's evolutionary history is rich with novelties. Photosynthesis evolved when single cells learned to harness light energy. Multicellular life evolved when cells learned to cooperate, etc. The same sort of evolution happens in the mineral kingdom. The earliest minerals represent particularly stable arrangements of atoms. These primordial minerals provided foundations for the next generation of minerals, which participated in life's origins. The evolution of life and minerals are intertwined as life uses minerals for shells, teeth, and bones. Indeed, Earth's minerals, which began with about 20 at the dawn of our solar system, now number almost 6,000 known today, thanks to ever more complex physical, chemical, and ultimately biological processes over billions of years. In the case of stars, the paper notes that just 2 major elements, hydrogen and helium, formed the first stars shortly after the Big Bang. Those earliest stars used hydrogen and helium to make about 20 heavier chemical elements, and the next generation of stars built on that diversity to produce almost 100 more elements. Charles Darwin eloquently articulated the way plants and animals evolve by natural selection, with many variations in traits of individuals and many different configurations, says co-author Robert M. Hazen of Carnegie Science. We contend that Darwinian theory is just a very special, very important case within a far larger natural phenomenon. The notion that selection for function provides evolution, drives evolution, applies equally to stars, atoms, minerals, and many other conceptually equivalent situations where many configurations are subjected to selective pressure. The co-authors themselves represent a unique multidisciplinary configuration: 3 philosophers of science, 2 astrobiologists, a data scientist, a mineralogist, and a theoretical physicist. Says Dr. Wong, in this new paper, we consider evolution in the broadest sense, change over time, which subsumes Darwinian evolution based upon the particulars of descent with modification. The universe generates novel combinations of atoms, molecules, cells, etc. those combinations that are stable and can go on to engender even more novelty will continue to evolve. This is what makes life the most striking example of evolution, but evolution is everywhere. Among many implications, the paper offers: one, understanding into how differing systems possess varying degrees to which they can continue to evolve. Potential complexity or future complexity have been proposed as metrics of how much more complex an evolving system might become. Number two, insights into how the rate of evolution of some systems can be influenced artificially. The notion of functional information suggests that the rate of evolution in a system might be increased in at least three ways: by increasing the number and/or diversity of interacting agents, increasing the number of different configurations of the system, and/or enhancing the selective pressure of the system, for example, in chemical systems, by more frequent cycles of heating, cooling, or wetting, drying. And in fact, I actually touched upon that previously when I alluded to the atmosphere of Titan. You might recall that I mentioned that some of the hydrocarbons, they go up into the atmosphere, they interact with solar radiation, and then they precipitate back down. That could potentially lead to complexification in these cycles. The third insight: a deeper understanding of generative forces behind the creation and existence of complex phenomena and the role of information in describing them. Number four, understanding of life in the context of other complex evolving systems. Life shares certain conceptual equivalencies with other complex evolving systems, but the authors point to a future research direction, asking if there is something distinct about how life processes information on functionality. Number five, aiding the search for life elsewhere. Is there a demarcation between life and non-life that has to do with selection for function? Can we identify the rules of life that allow us to discriminate that biotic dividing line in astrobiological investigations? And number six, at a time when evolving AI systems are an increasing concern, a predictive law of information characterizes how both natural and symbolic systems evolve is especially welcome. Laws of nature, motion, gravity, etc., codify the general behavior of various macroscopic natural systems across space and time. The law of increasing functional information described in this paper complements the second law of thermodynamics, which states that the entropy or disorder of an isolated system increases over time, and heat always flows from hotter to colder objects. So it's nice that this paper is actually synthesizing, or kind of what's already been known about for a long time, that these systems can evolve, and that there's been treatments such as Murray Gell-Mann's book, The Quark and the Jaguar, Stephen Jay Gould's treatments of this topic in The Structure of Evolutionary Theory, among other books, and that you can have these conceptual commonalities between different systems, but that there could be some core process which is common to all of them. So it's nice that they finally synthesized this. Many people will draw teleological implications from this work, but I don't think that that's necessary. These could be epiphenomena of just how the way that matter is necessarily structured. And so there's going to be I think there's going to be an interaction between contingency and necessity, but no doubt some people will still draw some teleological implications from this work. Interestingly, it was funded by the Templeton Foundation, which does try to bridge a gap between religion and science. But I think that this work is still very important. And of course, the aspects which are especially important for astrobiology and SETI, those are going to be relevant to UAP and UFOs as well. Anyway, that was about it. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Luis. I'm unmuted, everybody. All right, let's try this one more time. Oh, I gotta get back to the slide. Quote, in 1566, a strange figure was seen 3 times in the sky around Basel, Switzerland. on the 27th and 28th of the Hay month, and on August 7th towards sunrise and sunset. During the year of 1566, on the 27th of the Hay month, after the sun had shone warm and lovely in the bright and clear sky, towards sunset around 9 o'clock in the evening, it suddenly changed and assumed a different shape and color. First, she lost all her radiance and brilliance, then she grew no taller than the full moon, and finally she seemed to be crying blood, and the air behind her turned black. So she was seen by all kinds of people's eyes over the city and the country. In much the same way, the moon, which was almost full and shone through the night, was almost red and blood-colored in the sky. The following morning, when it was Sunday, around 6 o'clock, the sun came out again and rose with the same shape with whom she had previously slept. She shined on the houses, alleys, and the surroundings as if everything were fiery red and bloody. Further, on August 7th, toward sunrise and a little before, many large black balls were seen in the sky, flying in front of the sun with great speed and velocity, colliding with each other as if arguing. Some of them became fiery and red, soon disintegrated, and then went out." Unquote. The original text, which is here translated, comes from the famous Basil broadsheet of 1566, created by Samuel Cocius and Samuel Apiarius. The broadsheet goes on to interpret this purported strange event as signs from their Christian God. But what really caused the report? Broadsheets like this were commonly printed and published in certain parts of Europe at the time. They frequently recorded phenomena that resemble bolides, auroras, sun halos, and sundogs, naturally occurring phenomena that are nonetheless uncommon and strange in appearance. An occurrence very similar to the Basel report was also reported in an earlier broadsheet in 1561 in Nuremberg. From a translation of that earlier broadsheet by Ilse von Jacobi, quote, "In the morning of April 14th, 1561, at daybreak, between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred on the sun, and then this was seen in Nuremberg, in the city, before the gates, and in the country, by many men and women. At first there appeared in the middle of the sun 2 blood-red semicircular arcs, just like the moon in its last quarter. And in the sun, above and below, and on both sides, the color was blood. There stood a round ball of partly dull, partly black, Ferris color. Likewise there stood on both sides, and as a torus about the sun, such blood-red ones and other balls in large number, about 3 in a line and 4 in a square, also some alone. In between these globes there were visible a few blood-red crosses, between which there were blood-red strips, becoming thicker to the rear and in the front malleable like the rods of reed grass, which were intermingled, among them 2 big rods, one on the right, the other to the left, and within the small and big rods there were 3, also 4 and more globes. These all started to fight amongst themselves, so that the globes, which were first in the sun, flew out to the ones standing on both sides. Thereafter the globes standing outside the sun in the small and large rods flew into the sun. Besides, the globes flew back and forth among themselves and fought vehemently with each other for over an hour. And when the conflict in and again out of the sun was most intense, they became fatigued to such an extent that they all, as said above, fell from the sun down upon the earth, as if they all burned, and they then wasted away on the earth with immense smoke. After all this, there was something like a black spear, very long and thick, sighted. The shaft pointed to the east, the point pointed west." Unquote. This broadsheet is perhaps one of the most recognizable images associated with UFOs of all time. Carl Jung famously discussed both the Nuremberg and Basel broadsheets in his 1958 treatise on the psychological meaning of flying saucers. Often, the broadsheets of the 1500s were sensationalized, in a practice not too different from the tabloids of contemporary times. Reports were exaggerated, distorted, or perhaps even made up from whole cloth. They also often incorporated fantastical interpretations of such events as religious signs from heaven. So, one possible explanation for the report from Basel is that it was copied from the report in Nuremberg, with some details changed, some removed, and some added. And the Nuremberg report might have just been made up. But another possibility is that the Basel broadsheet and the Nuremberg broadsheet both record some type of weather phenomenon or some phenomenon involving light from the sun as it passes through the atmosphere. Here is another similar report. Quote, "When the sun was up only a few moments, it was observed to be a very peculiar color. The attention of several people was called to it, and while they were looking at it, thousands of discs, seemingly about the size of a wagon wheel, were seen to fill the entire heavens, and all of them seemed to be in motion and to fill the heavens from the earth to the sun. The bodies were described as being round in shape until they approached the earth, when they would change to different shapes, some becoming triangular, some square, and others taking on various proportions and odd forms. The colors of the discs were also said to be of different shades, some bright red, some green, black, etc. But when they reached the earth, all assumed a dense purple color. It appeared to those witnessing the phenomenon that the sun would swallow up some of the discs, and then again they would appear to sink into the solid grounds and then reappear. There was no noise save that made by the mountain folks who, whenever a disc would come directly at them, would either run away at a great rate or fall on their knees and pray. The phenomenon lasted fully an hour, and when it was over, the natives were pleased, for they were positive that the judgment day had come, and they were not prepared therefor." Unquote. This strange happening would not have happened in Western Europe during the mid-1500s. Instead, it reportedly took place on August 18th, 1893, in the small hamlet of Leslie in rural Cumberland County, Kentucky. This was well over 300 years after the Basel broadsheet and 75 years before Jung published his treatise on flying saucers. While it is within the realm of possibility that people in Kentucky or from another newspaper may have picked up some facsimile of one of the broadsheets from Basel or Nuremberg, or perhaps even a different broadsheet that carried a similar report, what we can establish is that the report from Kentucky is the same as the reports from Basel and Nuremberg in many of its details. All of the reports involve strange transformations and colorations to the sun. Large numbers of circular, either orb-shaped or disc-shaped apparitions are associated with the sun. All reports involve a reddening or darkening of the sun and sky. In all reports, these objects appear red, black, or in other colors. In all reports, the objects are reported as moving rapidly. All reports last on the order of an hour, and in 2 instances, as descending to the earth. The objects are described as descending to the earth at the end. It is reasonable to infer from these striking similarities that for whatever reason, the Kentucky report must somehow be related to the reports from Basel and Nuremberg, even if all of these reports were fabricated, and none of these events actually happened. There is no shortage of other reports of numerous discs or other objects, similar in some or even all details. In another story, which Jeff just posted yesterday, a Captain James A. Beveridge reported that he and a number of other witnesses all saw numerous, quote-unquote, black discs that, quote, in passing in front of the sun appeared like a large cannon shot, unquote. This event reportedly lasted for around 20 minutes between the hours of 3 and 4 o'clock on November 4th, 1867, near Chatham, England. That places the event about an hour before sunset. William Corliss provides 2 more similar reports in his Handbook of Unusual Natural Phenomena, originally published in 1977. He also compares these with the miracle of the sun, a very famous instance involving thousands of witnesses watching the sun perform fantastical transformations and maneuvers in Portugal in 1917. Corliss describes these reports as kaleidoscopic suns after witness Joseph Minturn, who reported that on January 19th, 1923, quote, I saw the sun behaving in a most unusual fashion, now surrounded by bright red flashing rays in all directions, then changing to yellow, in which the body of the sun, though more clearly visible, appeared to dance and shift about here and there in a radius of about 5 degrees. Again, changing to green, the rays flashing as in the red. All these changes taking place in less time than it takes to write. Of all the beauties seen, I should think the quickly changing mock suns the most beautiful, as they flashed here and there faster than it was possible to count them. The colors were so brilliant and dazzling that even after I had come indoors, anything I looked at appeared a mixture of all the colors seen. Unquote. A mock sun is another name for a sundog, a bright patch of light in the sky that can resemble the sun in both size and brightness. This next report took place in June of 1885 near Birmingham, Michigan, again right before sunset. Quote, the sky was clear with the exception of a few clouds of the cumulonimbus order, a few degrees above and to the northward of the sun. Suddenly there appeared a peculiarly weird and hazy condition of the atmosphere. There was an indescribable commingling and general diffusion of all the hues of the rainbow. During this state of things there appeared in the sky, on the earth, and on the trees innumerable balls of decomposed light presenting all imaginable colors and apparently of about the size of a bushel basket. They were uniform in size and appearance. The phenomenon was confined to that region of the sky about the sun, extending but a few degrees each side of it. It lasted about 20 minutes when it disappeared as suddenly as it came. Unquote. I have collected these accounts together here because they are either almost identical in nearly all of their details, or they are similar enough in many details to potentially have some sort of relation. But these accounts could all be of different phenomena. Some could be greatly embellished, especially those that come from popular broadsheets and newspaper articles. However, it is interesting that the accounts from meteorological magazines, specifically those gathered by Corliss, and also the one from Chatham, England, are to one degree or another very similar to the rest. These are also not the only reports of orbs sighted near dusk or dawn that I have found, and I will have to report on more of these at some other time. I have to give a special thank you, though, to Jeff Knox, whose research I relied on heavily throughout the process of gathering these reports. I not only found the Kentucky and Chatham reports because of him, but he also provided me with the original publication of Ilse von Jacobi's translation of the Nuremberg broadsheet. All right. Holy crap. And for a story to close out on tonight, the aurora visits the northern hemisphere. On Saturday night, the aurora borealis was visible over much of the UK and Ireland, The Guardian reported. Pictures of green and red auroras were posted on social media, including images of the aurora over Stonehenge. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, forecasts that the aurora will also be visible over the northern portions of North America tonight and tomorrow. It's forecast to be visible over Canada, Alaska, and some of the Midwestern United States. Before we go, we would like you to please consider subscribing to our channel, the UFO Detox Hour. Please also hit the like button and hit the notification bell icon if you'd like to get notified about upcoming videos. We would love to see your very tiny faces and other profile icons in the live chat. A great plus for joining the live chat is that you can give us constructive feedback live on the air if I manage to look at the chat, especially if we make any factual errors or mute ourselves for 10 minutes. Please also be sure to consider checking out our respective contents. I can be found at the Earth YouTube channel, Please also visit Luis Cayetano's website, ufology.com, and you can find Jeff Knox's daily posts on history and the science of UFOs on Exeter or Facebook. Jeff Knox spends all of his time studying UFOs. This is a fact, and he doesn't make any money off of it. Please consider visiting his Patreon page, not my Patreon page. I'm not getting any money. Only Jeff. Just make sure that Jeff gets money. That's what we're asking. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Luis.
Praise the cash.
What?
Borrowing a slogan from Cambion, the praise the cash.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Luis. A pleasure as always. Shout out to CJ Wheelwright, Courtney Block, Rob Christofferson, Tracing Owls, Todd Purse, Alan Greenfield, Oliver D. Smith, James Oberg, Robert Schaefer, Gideon Reed, William Corliss, Michael Huntington. I don't know most of these people, but I like them. The Demon Witch of the First Cave, the Demon Witch of the Second Cave, the Demon Witch of the Third Cave, the Demon Witch of the Fourth Cave, the Demon Witch of the Fifth Cave, the Demon Witch of the Sixth Cave, the Demon Witch of the Seventh Cave, and the Demon Witch of the Inner Council Chamber. No shout-outs to fascists. Sorry, fascists. All right. So, farewell, everybody. Thank you so much, Duncan, Simon. Did Steve show up tonight? I don't know if I saw him in here or not.
No.
Well, hi anyway, Steve. I'm sure you'll watch it later. Thank you for joining us, Aaron. It's always a pleasure. And Swink McLeod.
Hopefully next time the Men in Black won't mute Rachel's microphone for you guys. We're just gonna blame that one on the Men in Black. That's what Art Bell would do if he was hosting this show. So it was the Men in Black.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Luis. Was there anything you'd like to say before we go, Luis?
Nope.
All right.
Thank you.
Later.
All right. Bye, everybody.